As y'all may have seen, I cut myself in the last video, but coming on here now just to kind of do a little bit more. Finally took care of that area where the face had to be carved out again and sort of like get around sanding around it right now. So that is one thing we've taken care of. I think I had the wrong grit there for a moment, but I'd say since we already kind of worked with the 80 grit, it might be time to come down to a 120 grit. I do think from what I'm seeing, that is what I've got here. So I'd say this can perhaps be the next step. We sometimes have a hard time reading them as soon as the print comes off, which it often does when these sandpapers get really old and really used. Sometimes the numbers wear off and hard to tell what grit it is or how you're using it. But I'd say sometimes a little old worn out grit does a little bit good for sanding things that are carved out of wood. And kind of like what Calvin Grant said, he said to get the fiberback sandpaper instead of the paperback because it lasts a lot longer. It does you a whole lot more good. I'd say, you know, back before I started carving, when I just did a lot of scroll saw work, cut critters out of pine wood and pasted different parts to them, it was one of those things where among that work that I did in those days, it would kind of last sometimes, but not always. And I'd say for a little time that it takes to do a little work, I could always sand and grit levels start with. But sometimes I think in those days when I did that kind of work, I only did 3. I used a 60, a 120, and a 220, and that was kind of, or maybe I might have only used 2 for all I remembered, maybe 1 thick grit and 1 thin grit. But what I learned is that once you use the thick grit to get the worst of it out, you use thinner grits gradually to get the rest of it out. And I'd say when I used that paperback sandpaper, I'd say that, yes, it did wear very easily, and that's one reason why I learned over time to use the fiberback. And for all the layers you use when you work this kind of thing, I'd say it just makes a good use of our time and energy and makes us all feel special in ways we never knew or ever thought we would be. And I say a little time is going to come when we're going to work it all a long, long way. Sometimes I think there comes a moment when you get down to a last grit. Sometimes my last grit will be a 220, but right now it's a 240. Because when I was having to order all this extra sandpaper over the time when the pandemic first started, there was such a shortness on supplies, and I knew I'd need so much of it to use that I'd say I purchased loads of it, and that's kind of the reason why sometimes of all that was available at that time, there was no way to go to the store and buy it at that time because there was so much lockdown and the stores were all getting sold out. So I had to order it on Amazon, and even Amazon was a little shorter supplied back then and at that time. And so it just kind of happened that what I end up having to do is wait months for it to come in. So I had to be careful how much I used of what I had. Didn't want to use it all away, but in those days, it was kind of like, with all the scroll saw work I did, I would just kind of like take the little pieces and use sort of a mouse sander or a detailed sander to kind of smooth them on. So it's kind of like the work that we do just to kind of make things fit for us. And that was kind of how I smoothed things out, did the best of my work. And sometimes the roughest grits would be the ones that would quit working the first. And sometimes I tell you all that the woods were so hard that you had to put a little extra strength into them, and sometimes the more strength you put into trying to sand down those harder woods could kind of make it so that sand pads could get worse. I'd tell you all a little bit more about how I've done a little more research on scroll saws. I tried to put every kind of wood through the scroll saw, even the worst of woods, the thickest of woods, and thinking it would all work, but I learned that that little tiny blade, there's only certain types of wood and certain types of densities and certain types of grains it's designed for. And so I got another one this past summer that I haven't used yet, and hadn't had one in a few years until then, because I didn't think I'd be having much use for them, but finally got it and realized I did. So that was how that little bit of work came along. And as for what we need to say, I'll tell you a little thing here as I get along to the part where we make the face. There are little lines you draw in. One that kind of makes the eyes right below the forehead. I just drew that little line on both of these guys. There's one that comes along here a little further down to be the line right below the nose and the cheeks. So we gotta try to put that in as well. We know that there's a place where a couple lines are made here to kind of make out the little nose in the center. And for all we know, I say that light is coming a long way to us. Light is brightening its way to us, making similar folks of us. I'd say that this is a time when we got work coming up to do, and almost like this too I just did. So I think there's little steps we're going to take for the face. Try to make a little bit extra use of our video time. So we got the little detail knife here. We're going to carve along that line, make the line that becomes the eyes, that is right below the forehead, and make another one too that is right below the nose. And so that's how that's going to be so brighter to us. As you see, we've done that. We're going to take care of that same step on this other one too. I don't remember whether I kind of, did the face or not when I did the Buckeye St. Nicholas figures from when I filmed the carving of those. But as for how this little bit of work is coming along, we're just carving in another little line to make out the face right above the beard. So we're going to try to, in this same video, take these same little steps to carve out the lines that separate the nose from the cheeks. That's going to be a little work being done here. We've gotten this far about that. And likewise, we got quite a similar step to take right here on the other one as well. So I say, this is how the business shall come along for us, make its way through us and in us, I say. But I'll tell you, I think my parents are up there having supper, so as soon as I get done with this video, I think I'll go up and have supper with them. So I'd say we're going to have a little bit more work to come, but in the next video, we'll take care of that. Goodbye for now. See you in the next video.